She was named one of the top 100 most influential people in cannabis by High Times Magazine in 2018, and one of the 2016 Cannabis Business Executives 50 most important women in the cannabis industry. She became an advocate after working in the political realm under the Obama National Finance Committee. She opened Simply Pure Dispensary in Denver in 2015 with her husband, Scott Durham. And she is the first African-American woman to own a medical marijuana dispensary in Colorado. Please welcome Wanda James. Thank you so much, Wanda, for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to back up a little bit. And when did you get started or get involved in the cannabis industry? When did you first get involved?
Well, when I first got involved, I was about 16 years old. But when we first got legally involved, it would have been in mid-2009 when we decided to open up our first dispensary, which was the Apothecary of Colorado in downtown Denver.
And back in 2009, that was, again, long before this has become the vogue industry and the green rush began. So, this must have been, and I was, with all 100% disclosure, I had an office in downtown Denver, and can't imagine how you were received back in 2009, especially being an African-American woman in Denver, Colorado, opening a dispensary. How did that go?
Well, it was crazy because there was no rules back then, right? So, literally, folks would show up at your desk with cannabis in backpacks or edibles, and you would taste them or try them right there on the spot and decide whether you're going to put them in the dispensary or not. There was no labeling. There was no packaging. There was no licensing. When we opened up the first dispensary, we opened as a quote-unquote wellness center because that was the closest thing to license that we could do. So it was really different. Denver in Colorado was home for me. I was former military. My dad was stationed here throughout my life off and on. So coming back to Colorado, coming off of Obama's National Finance Committee and after working with Congressman Polis, now Governor Jared Polis, it all made sense. But even then, there was an article written in the Denver Post called Coming Out of the Cannabis Closet. And when that article came out, we got phone calls from a lot of political folks saying that we had destroyed our careers. Nobody was going to talk to us again.
Right. And then talk a little bit about your husband's background.
So Scott is a former Marine, entrepreneur. He's been a horticulturist for the state of Massachusetts. He's been a chef and started cooking in the Caribbean when he was much younger, and has opened up 5 restaurants from California to Superior and Denver here in Colorado. And now he does edibles. He cooks for people. He cooks for folks that are ailing. And his new line of edibles will be out in the next few months.
Right, but now, you opened up your first apothecary back in 2009. Mm-hmm. Now, what's the name of the dispensary they have in Denver?
So now it's Simply Pure. So our second location is Simply Pure. Yep.
And you've watched this industry grow now for 10 years. What do you think about the growth, and especially how it's rolled out in Colorado?
So Colorado has done amazing things, and at the same time, it's messed a lot of things up. Being first is always difficult. What's amazing about what we've done here in Colorado is, the different levels of products that we have here, and you're aware of everything from, candy bars to soft drinks to topicals, all done extremely professionally, extremely well done. With the latest technology, and it's been fantastic from that aspect. Getting rid of the black market, I think Colorado has done a phenomenal job. Our cannabis here, for the most part, is definitively clean and safe. What we didn't do well is we did not allow for minority ownership. As a matter of fact, Colorado is now famous, I believe, for having so few minority owners that, having so few minority owners, it's pretty sad.
Right. And now I would think that by now Colorado would have formed a trade organization, if you will, where people would come together a little bit more than they would battle each other on the battlefield, trying to eke out their own little, fiefdom. But it hasn't built one yet. Why?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of trade associations in town, but once again, they're representing a lot of the larger, well-financed firms. I think the issue with this industry is a lot of distrust amongst owners. I mean, when we were in the restaurant industry, restaurant owners get together and we talk about what we're doing all the time, let each other know what's the ins and outs, what's going on, how's it going on. And here you don't really have that, it's very much close to the chest. People don't want to tell you what they're doing, what new things are coming out. And I think the system has actually set us up to battle against each other, right? Because of the amount of dispensaries in Colorado, I don't know that we have done a good job of creating a community of like-minded owners, unfortunately.
And now you are one of how many minority owners of dispensaries in Colorado now? Do you know?
Well, and there's the biggest issue as well too, is Colorado itself will not take any information as to who owns these dispensaries. We do know that there are 1,685 owners in Colorado. We estimate that less than 15 of them are black or brown. We've come up with that there are 2 black-owned dispensaries in Denver, maybe 3, and there might be 2 in Aurora. So we think all told, there may be 5 black-owned dispensaries in Colorado, but we're not sure.
And then that still goes back to that question I had. Why would not the black minority, very small ownership group at least come together from time to time to just talk about the pitfalls and advantages of the business?
So we've been trying to do that. We've got the list together and we've been talking to folks. And I will say that we are partnering with one of the other firms here in Colorado. Hopefully we'll be able to announce that partnership very soon, but we're very excited about what that could potentially mean for us. And, you're going to have those kind of partnerships, even across the nation. We talk about it now, even in terms of Colorado, but across the nation, there are probably less than 20 black-owned cannabis businesses. So even from that standpoint, the strength that you would get if we had all come together when we talk about that.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know, I own my own brand myself, and I'm looking forward to looking at synergisms with other organizations, especially black-owned organizations across the country. So we should, after this podcast, actually reach out and let's stay in touch so we can look at what's coming down the pike rather than what's already passed.
This in itself, I think, is one of the most important things that we can do because, we're up against right now, and as you know, in the industry, large, billion-dollar hedge funds are what's buying out and what's competing for most of the licenses across the United States, which is why minority firms and women-owned firms or veteran-owned firms, are not well represented within this community because the cost of entry has become ridiculous. Even the cost of writing a license could cost you $250,000.
Right.
So it would be fantastic to actually have an allied group of people, like-minded folks that are saying state to state, let's put some expertise and force behind making sure that some of these licenses are going to minority-owned businesses.
Let's talk a little bit about the cannabis itself. I mean, now your dispensary, you said that you literally have been trying to stay away from the technology that speeds people through the experience and would rather keep your experience one that's more, I would say, more patient-centric, where a person can come in and literally spend some time with you to understand what they're about to purchase. Why don't you talk a little bit about that philosophy?
So right now, and especially in Colorado, we do well over $1 billion worth of sales. So the general retail model is get them in, get them out, order online, come in, pick up your bag, get in, get out. Now, we have that capability. If you want to order online, it will be ready and sitting there for you for the person that knows exactly what it is that they want. But we pride ourselves at Simply Pure because we're America's first dispensary, so we get so many people that come in from Kansas and Wyoming and Texas and Florida that are, 55, 70, 80 years old. Last time they got high was the Bob Marley concert in 1972, and
Right.
or their college dorm room. And now they really are coming in for things. And even though we're a recreational dispensary, we started off as medical, but people that are coming in from out of state a lot of times are coming in for medical issues. They have back pain, they have high blood pressure, they have anxiety. So they want to talk about what works.
Yeah, I've been talking about, talking about quite a bit that, excuse me, I'm so sorry, that, a lot of times, we've changed this terminology to recreational or adult use, but don't recognize that the person who actually selects cannabis over alcohol probably originally selected cannabis because of an underlying medical issue, even if though they won't even call it that themselves. They're coming in for a reason why they don't want to use alcohol, but they would prefer to use cannabis, and cannabis is solving an issue for them. Do you kind of find that the same with most of your recreational patients?
That's almost 100%. I got to tell you, in this country right now, honestly, I don't know anybody over the age of 40 right now that does not have issues in sleeping. I mean, I'm going to put out there that probably 98% of the people I know have an issue either falling asleep or staying asleep. A lot of folks that are coming in are battling insomnia and don't want to take the prescription drugs for it, so they are coming in asking for that. The second biggest reason we get is pain, whether it's back pain or leg pain, joint pain, arthritis. It's pretty amazing what we're finding, and now we're finding that THC and CBD does great for things like migraine issues. So yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are coming in, and that's why we wanted people to sit down and talk about where they're trying to get with this plant. And even if where they're trying to get is, I just want to come home and relax when I get home from work. In my mind, that's a medicinal issue too, right?
Absolutely. And you look at the fact that, in Israel, back 10 years ago, they made cannabis a geriatric drug, whereas at the age of 70, you could automatically get your card or prescription filled for cannabis just because of your age, recognizing that cannabis fulfilled the need of so many prescription medications that people were taking that were unnecessary.
Yep.
And we've just not caught up with that yet here in the United States. Though I did see an article recently, and maybe you can speak to this about demographically, but I just saw an article last week that said that, contrary to popular belief, the largest percentage of buyers of cannabis now in the recreational markets are people over the age of 60.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And the fastest growing group under that group are actually older women that are finding the cannabis is helping with menopausal issues. Montel, the way that we are being prescribed drugs in this country, tell me how anybody can feel good when you're taking 6, 7, 8 different drugs a day. And I don't care what they're for. You just can't feel good when you're taking that many drugs. There has to be a better way in this country of figuring out how we're going to age, how we're going to deal with things like chronic pain without, numbing our senses and taking away who we are from a basic personality standpoint. So,
but I think the model has been just grown this way over the last 70 years, where we every day you find out about another drug that just got approved after $200 million worth of research on a molecule that didn't even need to be researched, but we spend all this money to get, the FDA to give approval for a drug that then causes more side effects than what it's trying to cure.
Well, and I think we're finding with this explosion too with cannabis, I think it's starting to open up the minds to at least a lot of young doctors and a lot of young medical professionals on just plant-based medicines in general. Yes, cannabis and what this plant can do with CBD and CBN and all the different parts of it that we're only now starting to discover does amazing things, but we would be foolish to believe that this is the only plant on the planet that has, these amazing types of medicinal effects.
Correct. And we know now that as we look at lots of different plants, like you just said, on the planet, we're starting to find out that cannabinoids or molecules similar to cannabinoids exist in other fruits and vegetables.
Exactly.
And people, they've avoided them because we've been stuck in this mindset that, not science, but pharmaceuticals are better, and there's no what we've recognized is that plant-based pharmaceuticals are better than the pharmaceuticals that are made from replicated molecules.
That's exactly it, right? That's exactly it. It. So we'll see what this opens up for us, and this is the beauty of cannabis. And like I said, the idea that if medicine and it has a side effect and the side effect makes you giggle and really enjoy a cheesecake, I don't know if that's really all that bad, so I'm all about this plant.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I have to bring this up now, just like myself, you spent time on active duty in the military yourself, did you not?
Absolutely. You and I actually met in the military.
Really? When was that?
We did.
Remind me.
Oh, no.
No, I don't go. No, I'm saying remind me, please. Tell me where.
We met in recruiting district in New York City back in, and I don't know if it was end of 1990, somewhere right in there.
When I was speaking around the country.
You were coming in, and they had brought together a group of black officers because they'd sent us throughout the South, but we all started in New York, and we'd gone to a high school with you to see you do a thing, and I think that next morning they had sent us back down through Mississippi, or not us, you weren't with us in that group, but they'd sent the group out to New York City. But it was interesting back then watching you address a group of high schoolers to talk about there's a better way than drugs and gangs. So
I will say to you that I remember that, and now I think I remember you being a part of that contingent because you were one of the only African American females officers there, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember. Now the reason why I remember it, so people out who are listening right now don't think I'm just full of crap. I'm going to tell you the reason why I remember it is because the school that Wanda is talking about is one of the only schools in Manhattan that let me speak. I spoke in over 1,500 schools across the country, and when I tried to come back to speak in New York City, literally, because, the program that I had started back then that you were talking about, it was called Reach the American Dream, and there was only one person in this country that was allowed to speak in schools, and it was a former police officer, named Toma. And because of the Toma speeches, they created that television series or a television special that was called, it was Locked Up. I can't remember the name of it now, where they literally took people some young people into prisons and had them scared straight. That was the name of the show back then.
Scared Straight,
And because of Scared Straight, the New York City public schools were shutting down people coming into schools. And I remember this event where I spoke at because it was the only event that the only school in New York City that would allow me to come in and speak. So I remember you being there. Wow, that is really, really funny. So it takes this long for us to circle back to each other. Oh, wow, it's really good.
And it's interesting too of how many vets are involved in this industry or want to be involved in this industry, and how many vets are patients of the cannabis plant and asking for the cannabis plant for things from pain to PTSD. So,
and especially the way we're trained, and let's go back to that date. You said it. I was in that school speaking to kids about staying in school, staying away from drugs, and staying away from all the other negative youth trends. And back then, my mindset was more conservative and more the fact that, and at that point in time, I didn't know anything at all about cannabis.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And even when you think about the military, I get asked about the time, those years was the only time where I didn't smoke was because the penalties for a military officer being caught with, street drugs or anything would, straight to Leavenworth. But what I did find
and a dishonorable discharge.
Oh yeah, there was your life was done. But the thing that I did find interesting about the military and being deployed, I was in Bermuda as a IUSS officer with a P3 squadron. Is in the officers club, top shelf alcohol was 75 cents. So you could drink, and if you could stay standing when the Marine Harrier pilots were in, and you could outdrink those guys, that was a badge of honor.
Absolutely, and if you got up the next morning still with some on your breath, but you didn't take a drink in the first thing of the day, they didn't care. Which was really ridiculous to me.
Exactly.
Let me tell you,
exactly.
I also will go ahead and make the admission, but I know, I did 3 submarine trips, and there were several of the senior enlisted guys who used to know how to get away with bringing on a case of mouthwash. You know, you have guys showing up for deployment with 2 cases of mouthwash and go, I wonder why he wants to have his breath so clean. Because the fool was drinking while we were at sea. You know what I mean?
Because you're drinking out. I mean, it's a badge of honor of being able to be drunk in the military. And now as people are starting to talk about that, we're finding out that level of alcoholism has caused, tremendous issues. So it's sad that at this point that we're still not allowing people to choose how to even recreate. But
yeah. Well, at least the VA is kind of this odd tacit, policy where if a person tests positive in a state where there is legal cannabis, then they are not at least voided of their VA benefits. So at least we're moving in a positive direction. Exactly.
Which hopefully we move faster as soon as we get this off the schedule and move it toward legalization.
Which, by the way, I'm so sorry. By the way, I wonder, what are your thoughts about that? How fast do you think we're going to? You've been a part of this industry now, actually selling product for now 10 years. How much longer do you think it'll be before our government wakes up and changes some of the regulations?
I think we're going to see dramatic movement within the next 24 months, if not the next 12 months. And I think that the reason for that is we're at 33 states right now that are allowing for medicinal sales, 11 states that are allowing for recreational sales, and then California. And California is the wild card.
Remember the District of Columbia, too, now. Okay,
and the District of Columbia, actually D.C. But California is the wild card in this because of the amount of money that California will generate. And there is no way that we can continue to have an illegal market that's generating, $15 billion, $20 billion a year across the nation. I mean, that needs to be a regular business. It needs to operate like a business. I think what people don't realize is business owners currently don't have normal business practices. In other words, we can't depreciate. We can't write off our employees.
You can't put your money in a bank.
You can't.
I mean, let's just start with the simplest thing of all. You can't accept a credit card. So when you at the end of the week, when you take all of your receipts, you got to go. I still know of people in different areas of this country rolling money into coffee cans and putting them in vaults that they have built themselves in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. I mean, there are still a few places in Denver that have literally built vaults into their grow facilities. And I mean, this is an obscene way to do a legal business. And especially at the point that we're now a decade into this, clearly it's not going anywhere. But the federal government, what people don't understand, we are still taxed by the federal government at 80% of our income, which is all of our profits, because we are taxed under the same laws that govern Scarface or Pablo Escobar,
Right.
So this is the federal government makes billions of dollars off of this industry, but there's no way that we can continue this without the very basics, like you say, i.e. banking. So I think that we're in for a game changer coming up here very quickly. I don't know.
We have seen some movement. We have seen some movement in Congress about trying to change the regulations when it comes to banking. Yeah. And that hopefully would happen, but I'm not sure under this administration whether or not we'll see that happen.
I think pretty soon this administration is going to need all the friends that they can get. So
right, yeah. Well, that would also be one. That would also be one that might, bode well for him individually as a re-election component, but would then also bode poorly for the rest of us. I'm so interested in your husband's involvement in your business, especially, you ought to go ahead and tout some of his, largesse. The fact that he was second on the Bon Appetit Chef's Challenge.
He did. He won the semifinals and came in second as Bon Appetit Chef. He has been, his edibles have won all different types of awards. He cooks for numerous athletes and celebrities. Our restaurants in LA, Scott always had a celebrity following, from the Waynans to Robert De Niro and all different types of folks. So, I mean, this is what he does. He loves the food behind it. So we look forward to getting ready to open up, hopefully one day, a cannabis restaurant. Unfortunately, Colorado's laws don't allow for that yet. We saw that it happened in California. But we have a line of edibles coming out by the end of the year. So keep your eye open for that. And, Scott believes in, food and cannabis. It's therapeutic. It's good for you. It's relaxation. It's what he does. So,
and have you been
for us, philosophy?
Yeah. Have you been? I can tell that you guys have a philosophy of inclusion. And have you been mentoring any people in the industry, especially any women, especially any African American women?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's really what we do. It's interesting when you look around, and it's funny because I'm not going to say that we try to be inclusive. We just are inclusive, right? The folks that are around us that we bring in, my director of marketing, my personal assistant, are both African American women. We make sure that we go deep into the communities of color when we're hiring to let people know that these jobs exist, because that's the other thing. People don't know that cannabis companies have controllers and marketing directors and COOs. So we like to make sure that folks understand that, these jobs are out there. Just it's up to the companies to reach into the communities to find the people.
Well, I'm involved right now in multiple states. I mean, I literally have a footprint, I think, in probably now 12 or 13 states, not necessarily business footprint, but just a presence, either having testified legislatively or involved with movements that are going on at the time. But what about, I literally just got involved in some initiatives that are going on in Maryland, and, I'm asked quite often, is there a website or a email address that people could reach out to you on that you can give up right now to say, if you're an African American entrepreneur and you're looking to get into business, then reach out to Wanda James and we might be able to give you some assistance.
Absolutely. So Wanda at cannabisglobal.org.
Okay, Cannabis Global. And you want to talk a little bit about that initiative, Cannabis Global Initiative.
Global Initiative.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about it.
CGI has been around for a little over 10 years. We use this as our consulting arm, where we work with different consultants from all over the globe to be able to address the different issues that municipalities have in speaking about cannabis becoming legal, that companies have addressing the different issues that are now happening because it's legal. If your top 3 executives come to Colorado this weekend and then come back, and you give them a drug test in Alabama, that might not bode well for your
right.
for your companies. So we just want to be able to tell people, how to work with this. We're looking at opening up a supplier diversity to make sure that even for the Black and brown entrepreneurs that have businesses outside of cannabis, we need you in cannabis. We need graphic designers, we need packagers, we need, folks that do waste management. So anything that you can imagine is happening in other industries, it's happening in this industry, and we want people to know that there are people of color that do this.
Absolutely. And, I really would love to have your views also on, recently, and there's an article that came out about a week ago about a young lady who was, in a nursing program who, in a state where cannabis is legal, literally tested positive going to school and then was actually kicked out of her class in Arizona. What do you think about this? I mean, how do we change these attitudes if we can't even change the attitudes of those that are in states where cannabis has been voted in by the constituency of the state? You have a state like Arizona that has legal medical marijuana. It is legal in that state. You have a person who has a prescription or has a recommendation in that state using cannabis and going to school, and then when the school does a drug test, throws them out of the school because they're using something that's legal in their state.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Just out of curiosity, what was this nurse's last name?
I got the article right here in front of me.
I'm just curious.
I'm pulling it up. Did she give her name out here? I'm talking about as a college student. Let me find her name. Sorry. Here, I'll follow this up. Go ahead.
The reason why. So it sounds
She
like
was expelled from the Gateway Community College in Phoenix last month for violating the school's drug policy after she tested positive for marijuana, which she uses to treat her chronic pain from polycystic ovary syndrome.
Which is absolutely, which is recommended by a doctor if it was a medical marijuana state.
Correct.
Should be no different than, I mean, and I would say, once again, I'm not a lawyer, I just play one on TV, but I'm kind of wondering what the HIPAA charges are, because medical marijuana is covered by our HIPAA rules. So that information shouldn't have been any more accessible to the school than whether or not she's using oxycodone or Valium for anxiety.
But you know what they probably did was they drug tested her for all drugs. Marijuana came up positive, and they used that, saying that you volunteered to the drug test, so therefore we're going to voluntarily throw you out.
Which is ridiculous, and you know, it's what we see. We see less of it now because 65% of the country is moving toward this, but there are still these blocks of folks that still can't get past the dorm room, Bob Marley blacklight poster, idea of this is what being stoned means. And we find that people with all different types of diseases now are finding relief, especially neurological diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
And MS like
that you're aware of. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So it's time that we start to change this. And once again, Montel, I think it takes people to speak out about it that normalize it. And you do a great job of this. Somebody who is respected, that people do know, and you check all the boxes of what, quote unquote, in America respectability is. And we've got to start to show that this is a very normal thing for people to want, to need, and it works.
Absolutely.
It works.
It works, and especially, recently, I'm going to keep you a couple more minutes, but I have had many discussions with several prominent doctors, Dr. Oz, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and Sanjay, who's been doing these specials on cannabis, who finally, in this last one that he did, a lot of people didn't recognize it or didn't see it, didn't hear it, but he finally, in this last special, number 5, stated unequivocally that THC is not the villain. He had, up until this point in time, I think he's part of the reason for our boon of recent years, and that is because of his specials talking about Charlotte's Web and talking about CBD. But in a sense, when he talked about CBD, he gave a tacit vilification of THC. In this very last special that he did, he finally, in the last 5 minutes of it, and he and I had a discussion about it, I told him that you can't vilify THC because we know that for studies that have been going on for over 15 years in Israel and in other places around the world, we've discovered that THC has an enormous impact on tumor cells and on helping to also regulate, homeostasis. So how can you vilify it? And he finally came out and said that. So, how do we crack this nut now, Wanda? I mean, really, literally, I think it's time now. I was in discussions yesterday with a group talking about what I believe is the biggest issue facing this industry right now. It's education. We have done a great job in opening up dispensaries, opening up stores, but we're not educating even the demographic that is in most need. And I'm going to say the only reason why cannabis has evolved to where it has, it's been because of baby boomers who are politicians, who remember that, I smoked a joint when I was 15 or 16, and I'm not, in jail or shooting people or killing people. So then they finally recognize it, and Bobby Babuto, who was smoking, is now the president and CEO of Upstart Fire Company. So they've lessened their angst against it, but they are the ones who literally are in most need of it, I believe, and that's the baby boomer population, which has the most disposable income in this entire country, by the way.
That, and also too, when it happens to you, when you hear that you have MS, when you hear that you have cancer, when it's your child with epilepsy, all of a sudden then, whatever anybody has that they think, can help, you're going to turn to that. And I got to tell you, I hope to God I never hear those words in my life, but if I found out that I had cancer tomorrow, I would turn to my friends and colleagues in this industry, because I have yet to see how big pharma ends cancer without surgery and without destroying your body. And I have seen it work on tumors and with people in this industry. I would go that route first. if I'd ever
Well,
heard those words.
well, let me tell you, I don't know if you know this or not, but about a year and a month ago, well, a year and 2 months ago, I had, wow, no, it's longer than that. About a year and 4 months ago, I had a major hemorrhagic stroke, and have talked to and been seen by some of the top neurologists in the country and in the world. And one of those neurologists, I won't give out their name, said to me unequivocally that if I ever had a stroke, and especially if I had one like yours, I would do exactly what you did, and that is turn to cannabis as quickly as I possibly can. As a matter of fact, he said, I probably, if I'm surviving it, I would definitely be using it the day after, and part of the reason is because of the neuroprotective quality that we know full-spectrum cannabinoids has, period.
Yeah.
But, that's somebody who said it to me, and look at the way I just explained it. I can't give out his name. But,
exactly right.
We got to start getting some of these people at that top level to start to admit the truth.
About what this is, and it's time for all of the things that we had been told about this, and the younger generation gets it, that it's been marketed to. I mean, everything, if you're stoned every day, all day, no, that's not a good thing for anybody. But the idea that this plant has done the kind of harm that the Reefer Madness films have put out there over the last 70 years, it's just time to change that, and that's only going to change with normalization of people seeing it, with people in their everyday lives.
Well, hey, do me a favor, go ahead and throw out your stats again, so when people come to Colorado and they want to be able to check you out, where should they go up online to get information? Simply Pure?
Absolutely will. So Simply Pure Dispensary, and it's in Lodi in Denver, Colorado, and I can be reached at WLJ or WL James on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and Simply Pure MJ on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Okay, that's absolutely unbelievable. We're going to reach out to you again because we'd love to have you back. I mean, it's love talking to you. I could do, podcast after podcast after podcast with you. So if you want to spend a little bit more time chatting, we'd love to have you here at Let's Be Blunt.
Well, you know what? And I absolutely love this, and thank you for doing that. And BZ, Mr. Montel, you're doing a great job.
Oh, you are too, Wanda. Thank you so much for your perspective and your presence in this industry. And so many more people need to understand. If you have questions, you want to get some advice, Wanda James is the place to go. I'm going to say thank you so much, Wanda, for being a part of today's Let's Be Blunt podcast. And make sure you tune in to the next Let's Be Blunt.